The distress call. The Grand Council chamber of the Galactic Alliance glittered with the reflected light of 3 suns streaming through its crystal dome. 2,000 representatives from across the galaxy sat in concentric rings, their forms as varied as the stars themselves. Some floated in bubbling suspension tanks, others perched on specialized gravity platforms, while many sat in conventional seats adapted to their unique physiologies. Ambassador Zorlak of the Tellurian Collective stood at the central podium, his translucent skin pulsing with bioluminescent patterns that shifted from blue to green as he spoke. He was mid-sentence describing new trade routes when every communication panel in the chamber flashed crimson. The room fell silent. In 7 centuries of Alliance history, the emergency override had never been activated. First speaker Nyala rose. From her seat, her forearms raised in a calming gesture. "What is the meaning of this interruption?" she demanded, her melodic voice tinged with concern. The main projection field activated, revealing the face of a Meridian, one of the Alliance's founding species. The alien's crystalline features were cracked and scorched, background filled with smoke and distant explosions. "This is Admiral Vextor of the Meridian Defense Force," the figure said, voice crackling with static. "Our colonies in the Cygnus Arm are under attack by unknown forces. 3 worlds have already fallen. Our fleets..." A massive explosion rocked the transmission. "Our fleets are ineffective against their weapons. We request immediate assistance from all Alliance members." The transmission abruptly ended, leaving the council chamber in stunned silence before erupting into chaos. First speaker Nyala called for order, her voice amplified above the din. "Emergency protocols are now in effect. Defense Committee will convene immediately." 3 hours later, in a smaller chamber deep within the Alliance headquarters, 12 representatives gathered around a holographic display showing the devastation across the Cygnus Arm. The images were horrifying. Entire cities reduced to ash, orbital platforms shattered, and fleeing civilian ships being systematically hunted down and destroyed. "Their tactics show no interest in resources or conquest," noted Defense Coordinator Zix, a diminutive Arcturian whose species had once been warriors before embracing peace 10 millennia ago. "This appears to be extinction-level aggression." "What of our defense fleets?" asked Representative Olos, his gelatinous form quivering with anxiety. Zix's compound eyes dimmed. "The combined forces of 3 member species have engaged the enemy. All have been destroyed or scattered. The Alliance hasn't faced a military threat of this magnitude in centuries." "Then we are doomed," whispered Olos. A heavy silence fell over the room until Nyala spoke. "There is one option we have not considered." All eyes turned to her. "The humans," she said simply. The chamber erupted again with multiple voices speaking at once. "Impossible! The Deathworlders? They are barbarians! We denied their membership application just 30 cycles ago." Nyala raised all 4 hands for silence. "I am well aware of the Council's decision regarding Earth's application to join the Alliance. Their militaristic culture and high aggression index were deemed incompatible with our peaceful coalition. Their planet is classified as a death world," added Zix. "Extreme gravity, toxic atmosphere composition, lethal radiation levels, dangerous predators, and unpredictable weather patterns. The creatures that evolve in such conditions are necessarily formidable." "Precisely," said Nyala. "And now we need formidable." Representative Klee, whose species communicated through color patterns, flashed skepticism. "Even if the humans would help us after our rejection, what could one primitive species do against an enemy that has decimated our combined fleets?" Zix activated a new hologram, a historical recording from Earth's application process. It showed human military exercises, warships performing complex maneuvers, soldiers training in what seemed like impossibly harsh conditions, and weapons demonstrations that made several representatives flinch. "When we rejected their application," Zix explained, It wasn't because we doubted their capabilities. It was because we feared them. Humans evolved on a world that constantly tried to kill them. Their entire history is shaped by conflict and survival against overwhelming odds. They don't just accept hardship, they thrive in it. And their military? Asked Olos. Never fully demobilized, replied Zix. Even in their centuries of peace, they maintained what they call a ready response force that could be expanded rapidly. They have real warships, not the converted research, and transportation vessels that comprise our defensive fleets. Nyala's skin pulsed with determination. I will go to Earth myself. If there is even a chance they will help, we must take it. 3 days later, Nyala's diplomatic vessel entered Earth's solar system. She had spent the journey studying human culture, history, and language, growing increasingly disturbed by what she learned. Humans had spent most of their history fighting against nature, against predators, and most frequently against each other. Their technological advancement had been driven primarily by warfare, with periods of peace being historical anomalies rather than the norm, and yet they had eventually unified their world, ended their most destructive conflicts, and reached for the stars. Perhaps there was more to these creatures than their violent history suggested. The diplomatic ship was met at the edge of the solar system by 3 human vessels, sleek, dark shapes, bristling with what were unmistakably weapon systems. They escorted Nyala's ship to a massive orbital station above Earth. When the airlock opened, Nyala faced her first in-person human. Admiral Helena Chen stood before her, a full head shorter than Nyala, but somehow projecting an aura of command that filled the room. She wore a dark uniform adorned with symbols of rank and accomplishment. First speaker, Nyala, Chen said, her voice level. Welcome to Earth. We didn't expect to hear from the Alliance after our membership was declined. Nyala performed the formal greeting gesture of her people. Admiral Chen, I come before you not as the proud voice of the Alliance, but as a supplicant. We face extinction, and you may be our last hope. Chen's expression remained neutral, but there was a slight shift in her posture. I think we should continue this conversation with our leadership. If you'll follow me? They proceeded to a large conference room where a dozen human military and political leaders had assembled. At the head of the table sat President Omar Santiago, who rose as Nyala entered. Madam Speaker, he said, inclining his head slightly. We've received fragmented reports about attacks in the Cygnus arm. Perhaps you can fill in the gaps. Nyala connected her data device to the human systems and projected the full horror of what was happening. She showed the attacks, the failed defensive actions, and the projections of the enemy's advance toward the core worlds of the Alliance. Our combined forces have proven ineffective, she concluded. The Alliance was founded on principles of scientific cooperation and peaceful exploration. We have few true warships, and fewer still who know how to use them effectively. President Santiago exchanged glances with his advisors before addressing Nyala directly. Let me understand correctly. You're asking for our military assistance against an unknown enemy that has already destroyed multiple worlds and fleets, despite the fact that 30 months ago, your council deemed humans too aggressive and dangerous to join your alliance? Nyala's skin color darkened with what humans might recognize as embarrassment. Yes. The very qualities that gave the council pause are now the qualities we desperately need. Admiral Chen leaned forward. What exactly do you expect us to do? Earth has a formidable defense force, but we're talking about interstellar warfare against an advanced enemy. We need everything, Nyala said simply. Ships, soldiers, tacticians, weapons. But most of all, we need what makes humans unique in the galaxy. Your indomitable will to survive against all odds. Your refusal to surrender when logic suggests you should. Your capacity to look into the abyss of certain defeat and still find a path to victory. The room fell silent as the humans exchanged looks. Finally, President Santiago spoke. 30 months ago, we extended a hand of friendship to the Alliance, offering our knowledge, our resources, and yes, our protection. You rejected us because you feared what humanity might bring to your peaceful coalition. Now you come to us because you need exactly what you feared. He stood, his expression grave but determined. Nevertheless, the threat you describe endangers not just the Alliance, but potentially all sentient life, including Earth. I will ask our Congress to authorize a military response, but I need something in return. Anything? Nyala said quickly. A seat on your council, not as a petitioner or a mercenary force, but as a full member of the Alliance, with all the rights and responsibilities that entails. Nyala didn't hesitate. I will personally guarantee it, President Santiago nodded. Then let me show you what humanity can do when called to action. Within 2 weeks, Earth's orbital shipyards hummed with activity. Vessels in mothball status were rapidly recommissioned, volunteer lists filled faster than military administrators could process them, and factories shifted to war production with practiced efficiency. Nyala watched in amazement as humanity mobilized. She had expected resistance, negotiation, perhaps even exploitation of the Alliance's desperate situation. Instead, she witnessed something altogether different. Purpose. Every human she encountered seemed energized by the challenge, focused with laser-like intensity on the task at hand. As she observed a briefing where Admiral Chen explained the limited intelligence they had on the enemy, Nyala began to understand something profound about humans. They didn't just accept the possibility of their own mortality. They embraced the opportunity to give their lives meaning through sacrifice for others. It was beautiful and terrifying all at once. 1 month after Nyala's arrival, the first human battle fleet was ready. 50 warships gathered in Earth orbit, each a purpose-built instrument of destruction unlike anything the Alliance had ever constructed. They were not the elegant, versatile vessels the Alliance favored, but specialized machines designed for one purpose only: war. On the bridge of the flagship UES Defiant, Admiral Chen welcomed Nyala as an observer. Your ships, Nyala said, looking at the tactical display showing the assembled fleet. They're impressive. They're just tools, Chen replied. The real weapon is the human spirit. We've faced extinction before. From ourselves, from nature, from cosmic accidents. Each time we've adapted and survived. Now we face it again, but this time we don't fight alone. Chen turned to her communications officer. Signal all vessels. Operation Thunderstrike commences in 30 minutes. The human fleet engaged there, faster than light drives, disappearing in brilliant flashes as they leapt toward the stars, toward war, toward an uncertain future, but carrying with them the unbreakable determination that had allowed humanity to thrive on a world that had tried for millions of years to kill them. As the Defiant made the jump, Nyala realized that the Alliance had been right to fear these Deathworlders, but for all the wrong reasons. Human strength didn't lie in their capacity for violence, but in their refusal to surrender to despair. Even in the darkest hour, the galaxy was about to learn what happened when death itself came knocking on humanity's door. They answered. Operation Thunderstrike. The human fleet exited faster than light travel at the edge of the Procyon system, the latest target of the unknown invaders. Admiral Chen stood on the bridge of the UES Defiant, studying the tactical display as telemetry data streamed in from scout vessels deployed ahead of the main fleet. Status report, she ordered, her voice calm despite the tension hanging in the air. 17 enemy vessels detected in orbit around Procyon 4. Reported Commander Jackson, her tactical officer. They appear to be deploying some kind of harvesting equipment to the planet's surface. Minimal defensive posture. They haven't detected us yet. Nyala, who had been given observer status on the bridge, looked troubled. Procyon I-4 was home to 3 billion Elysians. A peaceful agricultural world. Chen's expression hardened. Life signs? Scattered readings from the southern continent, Jackson replied after a moment. Maybe 5% of expected population density. Nyala's translucent skin paled to near white. They're being systematically exterminated. Not anymore, Chen said firmly. She turned to her communications officer. Signal all ships. Deploy to attack Formation Delta. Weapons free, maximum tactical autonomy authorized. Across the human fleet, final preparations were made. On smaller, faster destroyer-class vessels, pilots climbed into fighter craft. On larger battleships, weapon systems hummed to life, railguns charged, and missile bays opened. Each ship moved with precision into a complex three-dimensional formation designed to maximize firepower while minimizing vulnerability. Nyala watched in fascination. In just 3 weeks, these humans had analyzed all available data on the enemy, developed tactical responses, and trained their forces accordingly. Where Alliance species would have spent months deliberating and seeking consensus, humans simply acted. They still haven't detected us, Jackson noted with surprise. Their sensor technology must be optimized for different frequencies than our emission spectrum. Good, Chen replied. We maintain the element of surprise. All ships, commence attack run on my mark. 3, 2, 1 mark. The human fleet accelerated toward Procyon 4, maintaining communication silence. As they closed distance, the true scale of the enemy vessels became apparent. Each was enormous, nearly 5 kilometers in length, with strange asymmetrical structures that defied conventional spacecraft design. They resembled nothing so much as massive predatory insects rendered in metal and composite materials. At 300,000 kilometers, still well outside the enemy's apparent sensor range, the human fleet split into 3 battle groups. The first continued directly toward the largest concentration of enemy vessels. The second and third groups executed high-G maneuvers that would bring them into the system from completely different vectors, creating a 3-dimensional crossfire. Strike packages armed and ready, Jackson reported. Chen nodded. Execute primary. Strike. From the lead battle group, 50 kinetic penetrator missiles launched simultaneously. Unlike the energy weapons favored by most spacefaring species, these were essentially sophisticated tungsten rods accelerated to a significant fraction of light speed. Simple in concept, devastating in execution. By the time the enemy detected the incoming projectiles, it was too late to evade. The kinetic penetrators struck 3 of the largest enemy vessels, punching straight through their hulls. The ships didn't explode dramatically. There was just sudden darkness as systems failed, and then the slow drift of dead vessels. Direct hits confirmed on primary targets, Jackson announced. 3 enemy capital ships neutralized. The remaining enemy vessels responded with surprising speed, orienting toward the human fleet and firing energy weapons of terrifying power. Beams of coherent particles sliced through space, but the human ships were already executing evasive maneuvers, their trajectories calculated to be unpredictable. 2 human destroyers took direct hits. One disappeared in a blinding flash. The other tumbled out of formation, its propulsion systems compromised, but life support intact. Battle Groups 2 and 3 execute secondary strike package, Chen ordered. From opposite directions, the other. Human battle groups launched their attacks. Railguns fired hypervelocity projectiles while fighter squadrons raced toward the enemy vessels, targeting what appeared to be sensor arrays and weapon emplacements. The bridge of the Defiant shook as an enemy beam grazed their shields. Shield capacity at 64%, reported the engineering officer. Chen's expression remained focused. Bring us about to heading 047 Mark 12. Prepare main battery for firing solution on the lead enemy vessel. The massive human flagship turned, with surprising agility, bringing its main weapon, a spinal-mounted mass accelerator, to bear on the largest remaining enemy ship. The weapon charged, drawing enormous power from the vessel's reactors. Firing solution locked, Jackson confirmed. Fire! The Defiant shuddered as the mass accelerator discharged, sending a specially designed projectile hurtling toward the enemy at relativistic speeds. The impact was catastrophic, the enemy vessel breaking apart as the round detonated deep within its structure. Across the battlefield, human ships executed coordinated attack patterns while enemy vessels struggled to form an effective response. The invaders clearly had superior firepower but seemed unprepared for the humans' aggressive multi-vector assault. Nyala watched in awe. The Alliance's defensive actions had been predictable, conservative, focused on minimizing casualties. The humans fought differently, accepting losses as inevitable, pressing advantages ruthlessly, adapting tactics in real time. Enemy vessels attempting to regroup, Jackson reported. They're forming a defensive sphere. Chen studied the tactical display. They learn quickly. Signal fighter groups to withdraw to minimum safe distance. All capital ships prepare Package Omega. Admiral, Nyala interjected. What is Package Omega? Chen's eyes remained fixed on the display. Something we hoped not to use so early. Tactical nuclear devices. Nyala's skin pulsed with alarm. Nuclear weapons? In space combat? Not for direct destruction, Chen explained. The electromagnetic pulse effect. We've analyzed the enemy's response to our initial strikes and detected unusual sensitivity to electromagnetic disruption. On the tactical display, the remaining enemy vessels had formed a tight defensive formation, their energy weapons creating an interlocking field of fire that would be nearly impossible to penetrate conventionally. All ships confirm Omega packages ready, Jackson reported. Execute, Chen ordered. From multiple human vessels, small missiles launched toward the enemy formation. The enemy targeted them immediately, destroying several, but enough got through. They detonated just outside the enemy formation, not close enough to cause significant physical damage, but perfectly positioned to bathe the enemy vessels in intense electromagnetic radiation. The effect was immediate and dramatic. Enemy weapon systems flickered and failed. Several ships went completely dark, drifting powerless. Others maintained partial function but moved erratically. Their coordinated defense shattered. All ships, execute cleanup protocols, Chen ordered. Prioritize disabled vessels. Capture intact enemy technology wherever possible. The human fleet moved in systematically, dispatching crippled enemy vessels and deploying specialized teams to secure technology samples from the least damaged ships. 2 hours later, the battle was over. Of the 17 enemy vessels, 15 had been destroyed or disabled. 2 had managed to escape, jumping to faster-than-light speeds toward the outer reaches of the galaxy. The human fleet had lost 4 destroyers and 1 cruiser, with 3 other vessels suffering significant damage. Nearly 800 human lives had been lost. In the aftermath, Chen ordered immediate rescue operations for any survivors on Procyon 4. Medical ships and ground teams deployed to the planet's surface, finding scattered groups of Elysians who had hidden in underground shelters. On the bridge of the Defiant, Nyala approached Chen, who was reviewing casualty reports. You lost so many, Nyala said quietly. Chen looked up. Every loss hurts. Every name on this list was someone's child, someone's friend, someone's love. But they knew the risks, and they chose to fight anyway. The Alliance would never accept such casualties, Nyala admitted. Our species value individual life too highly to sacrifice hundreds, even to save billions. That's the difference between growing up on a garden world and a death world, Chen replied. On Earth, we learned early that survival sometimes requires sacrifice. Not because we value life less, but because we understand that sometimes the only way to protect what matters is to risk everything. Chen pulled up a holographic display showing the captured enemy technology. Our science teams have already made some interesting discoveries. These invaders, we're calling them harvesters based on their observed behavior, appear to be at least partially biomechanical. Their ships contain organic components integrated with mechanical systems. Is that significant? Nyala asked. Potentially. It might explain their vulnerability to electromagnetic disruption. More importantly, we've identified what appears to be a communication node. It was transmitting data continually, presumably back to wherever the harvesters come from. They have a central command, Nyala realized. Chen nodded. Every predator has a den. Find it, and you can end the threat permanently. Over the next 2 weeks, the human fleet conducted similar operations in 3 other systems under attack, refining their tactics with each engagement. The pattern was consistent. The harvesters possessed superior firepower, but lacked tactical flexibility. They seemed designed to overwhelm through brute force rather than adapt to unexpected challenges. Human casualties mounted, but so did victories. In the Altair system, a modified strategy using electronic warfare techniques disabled an entire harvester fleet with minimal human losses. In the Epsilon Eridani system, captured harvester technology was repurposed into weapons that specifically targeted the invaders' biological components. After each battle, Chen transmitted detailed reports to both Earth Command and the Alliance Council. The data sharing went beyond mere updates. It included tactical analyses, technical specifications of captured technology, and proposed defense. Strategies that Alliance worlds could implement even with their limited military capabilities. 6 weeks into Operation Thunderstrike, the human fleet regrouped at a forward operating base established in the Tau Ceti system. Ships underwent repairs, crews received needed rest, and scientists worked feverishly to understand the enemy. In a secure conference room aboard the Defiant, Chen met with her senior staff and representatives from the Alliance. "We've managed to translate portions of the Harvester communication data," reported Dr. Eliza Santos, the fleet's chief xenobiologist. "It's not a language as we understand it, more like a programming architecture with organic elements. But the content is clear enough. These aren't random attacks. This is a coordinated harvesting operation." "Harvesting what?" asked Captain Reyes of the cruiser Intrepid. "Everything," Santos replied grimly. "Biological material, minerals, energy sources. They're strip mining entire worlds and processing all life forms for resources. They're treating sentient beings as raw materials," Chen said, her voice tight with controlled anger. "There's more," Santos continued. "We've identified coordinates that appear consistently in their transmission patterns. We believe it's their central hub, possibly their homeworld or main fleet staging area." She displayed a stellar map, highlighting a location in a distant, rarely explored sector of the galaxy. "That's beyond Alliance space," noted Zix, who had joined the fleet as the Alliance's military liaison. "We've never thoroughly mapped that region." Chen studied the coordinates. "How confident are you in this assessment, Doctor?" 93%, Santos replied. "The transmission patterns are consistent with what we'd expect from a hierarchical command structure reporting to a central authority." Chen turned to her tactical officer. "Commander Jackson, if these coordinates do represent the Harvester Central..." "Command, what are our options?" Jackson frowned as she analyzed the data. "It's at the extreme edge of our operational range, Admiral. We'd need to establish a supply chain and possibly construct temporary FTL relay points. Even then, we'd be operating without nearby support." "And if we strike there?" Chen pressed. "If it is indeed their command center, a decisive strike could cripple their entire operation," Jackson replied. "But it would be high risk. We'd need to commit the entire fleet, potentially leaving recently liberated systems vulnerable to counterattack." Chen turned to Zix. "Could the Alliance provide any support for this operation?" The Arcturian hesitated. "Our military capabilities remain limited, but, inspired by your successes, several member worlds have begun converting civilian vessels for combat roles. They're not equivalent to your warships, but they could help establish supply lines and provide defensive coverage for liberated systems." Chen nodded thoughtfully. "We need more intelligence before committing to a strike of this magnitude. I propose a reconnaissance mission to verify these coordinates and assess the target. Over the next 3 days, plans were developed for a high-risk stealth mission. The destroyer UES Shadow was equipped with advanced sensor masking technology and dispatched to the mysterious coordinates. The Shadow returned 5 days later with disturbing news. The coordinates led to a massive space station, nearly the size of a small moon, surrounded by hundreds of harvester vessels. The station appeared to be processing enormous quantities of materials, presumably gathered from attacked worlds. More concerning was what the Shadow's sensors had detected within the station, signs of what might be a massive faster-than-light drive system. "It's not just a station," explained Commander Wei of the Shadow. "We believe it's a mobile harvesting base, a planet killer that can move from system to system, dispatching smaller vessels to gather resources." Chen absorbed this information, her face grave. "If that station can travel between star systems, no world is safe. We need to destroy it before it can relocate." "With respect, Admiral," Captain Reyes interjected, "even our entire fleet might not have the firepower to destroy something of that size." "Then we'll need to be creative," Chen replied. "Humanity has always been good at finding solutions when conventional approaches fail." She turned to her staff. "I want options on my desk in 24 hours. Nothing is off the table. We're not just fighting for the Alliance anymore, we're fighting for every sentient species in this galaxy, including our own." As her officers dispersed to their tasks, Chen remained in the conference room with Nyala, who had been silent throughout the briefing. "When your people first came to Earth," Chen said quietly, "did you truly understand what you were asking of us?" Nyala's skin rippled with complex emotion. "No. We knew humans were formidable warriors, but we didn't grasp what makes you truly dangerous." "And what's that?" Chen asked. "Your empathy," Nyala replied. "Other predator species evolved to be ruthless, caring only for their own kind. But humans, you're willing to die for strangers, for principles, for possibilities. You fight hardest not when your own survival is threatened, but when you're protecting others." Chen smiled slightly. "Perhaps that's the real legacy of Earth. Not that it taught us to kill, but that it taught us the value of life precisely because it is so fragile." She stood, looking at the star map still displayed on the conference room wall. "Now we need to make sure life continues in all its forms." The Harvesters have never faced an opponent like humanity. They're about to learn why Earth is classified as a death world, not because our planet kills us, but because it created us to be survivors. And now we're bringing that survival instinct to bear for the entire galaxy. The next phase of Operation Thunderstrike was about to begin, the hunt for the Harvester homeworld, and a final confrontation that would determine the fate of countless civilizations. The final confrontation. The combined human alliance fleet assembled. At the edge of the Deneb system, the last rally point before the push toward the Harvester command station. Over the past 3 months, what had begun as a purely human military operation had evolved into something unprecedented, a true interspecies fighting force. Alongside the 74 remaining human warships floated vessels from 12 Alliance species. Most had been hastily converted from civilian use, but some, like the Arcturian phase ships and Meridian crystal cruisers, had been purpose-built for war with human technical assistance. On the bridge of the UES Defiant, now bearing battle scars from a dozen engagements, Admiral Chen surveyed the assembled armada. At her side stood not only Nyala, but representatives from several Alliance species who had joined the fight after seeing humanity's willingness to sacrifice for worlds not their own. "Final fleet status report," Chen requested. Commander Jackson brought up the tactical display. "All vessels report ready status, Admiral. Human ships at 94% combat capability. Alliance vessels vary between 78% and 89% depending on type." Chen nodded. "And the special operations teams?" "Ready for deployment," replied Major Santos, who had been promoted to lead the mission's most dangerous component. "The boarding parties have completed final simulations. Success probability estimates range from 62% to 71%. Not great odds, Chen thought, but better than the alternatives. The plan they had developed was audacious, perhaps even foolhardy, but conventional approaches would fail against the overwhelming force they faced. Communications, Chen said. Open a channel to all vessels. When the connection was confirmed, Chen spoke clearly and firmly. This is Admiral Chen. In 30 minutes, we will execute the final phase of Operation Thunderstrike. Our objective is the neutralization of the Harvester Command Station and as many of their fleet assets as possible. She paused, knowing that on every ship, crews were listening, human and alien alike, united in purpose. The intelligence we've gathered confirms our worst fears. The Harvesters are not conquerors or colonizers. They are consumers. They reduce living worlds to resources, sentient beings to raw materials. They have done this before, in other galaxies, other times. The station we target is one of many they have used throughout cosmic history. Another pause, letting the magnitude of the threat sink in. Today we fight not just for ourselves, not just for the Alliance, but for all life in this galaxy. Many of us will not return from this mission. But those who fall will do so, knowing they stood against extinction itself. Chen's voice grew stronger. Humanity evolved on a world that tried at every turn to kill us. We survived because we refused to accept defeat. Not from nature, not from each other, and certainly not from invaders who see life only as something to be consumed. Today we bring that same defiant spirit to the defense of all sentient beings. She looked around at her bridge. Crew meeting each pair of eyes briefly. Execute final preparations. We jump in 25 minutes. Chen out. As the communication ended, Nyala approached Chen. A moving speech, Admiral. Chen shook her head slightly. Not a speech. A reminder. In moments like these, we need to remember what we're fighting for. Across the fleet, final preparations were made. On dedicated carrier vessels, pilots climbed into fighter craft. On converted Alliance ships, mixed crews of humans and aliens checked systems unfamiliar to both. On the special operations vessels, elite boarding teams performed last equipment checks, their specialized armor designed to function in both vacuum and the alien environment of the Harvester Station. The plan was complex but clear. The fleet would emerge from faster-than-light travel in a dispersed formation, immediately launching fighter squadrons and drone swarms to overwhelm Harvester defense systems. Meanwhile, specially modified stealth vessels would approach the station, deploying boarding teams at key access points identified through analysis of captured Harvester technology. While the main fleet engaged the Harvester vessels, drawing attention, outward, the boarding teams would fight their way to 3 critical targets within the station: the central control node, the main power generation system, and the faster-than-light drive mechanism. Each would be rigged with specialized explosive devices designed to exploit the Harvester's unique vulnerabilities. Jump coordinates locked in, reported the navigation officer. All ships confirm synchronized jump timers. Chen took her command. Chair. Execute jump on schedule. Space twisted around the fleet as 136 vessels simultaneously activated their faster-than-light drives, disappearing from the Deneb system and emerging moments later at the coordinates where the Harvester Command Station waited. The scene that greeted them was even more imposing than intelligence had suggested. The station was enormous, a grotesque fusion of mechanical and biological elements that stretched nearly 200 kilometers across. Around it orbited over 300 Harvester vessels of various sizes, arranged in a defensive formation that suggested they had anticipated the attack. "They knew we were coming," Jackson said, her voice tight. "Doesn't matter," Chen replied. "Execute Alpha Protocol immediately." From the human carriers, hundreds of fighters launched in perfect sequence, forming attack wings that accelerated toward the Harvester fleet. Simultaneously, specialized electronic warfare ships activated massive electromagnetic pulse generators, targeting the closest Harvester vessels. The space between the fleets erupted in energy discharges as harvester vessels fired on the approaching fighters. But the small human craft executed evasive patterns that seemed impossible, high-G maneuvers that would have killed most species, but that human pilots had trained their entire careers to withstand. Stealth insertion vessels report successful. "Deployment," Jackson announced. "Boarding teams are away." Chen nodded grimly. That part of the mission, at least, was proceeding as planned. Now they just needed to keep the harvesters occupied long enough for the teams to complete their objectives. All capital ships advance to engagement range. Targeting priority is their largest vessel types. Fighter groups focus on disrupting their defensive formations. The battle unfolded across a volume of space thousands of kilometers wide. Alliance vessels, though less heavily armed than their human counterparts, executed complex maneuvers that confused harvester targeting systems. Arcturian phase ships briefly shifted partially out of normal space-time, appearing in unexpected positions to launch attacks before phasing out again. The Defiant shuddered as multiple harvester energy beams struck its reinforced shields. "Shield capacity at 62% and holding," reported the engineering officer. "Return fire main batteries," Chen ordered. "Target the command nodes of the lead vessel." The Defiant's spinal-mounted mass accelerator discharged, sending a tungsten rod, enhanced with electromagnetic disruptors, hurtling toward the largest nearby harvester ship. The impact was catastrophic, tearing through multiple decks and severing what appeared to be a critical control conduit. The massive harvester vessel listed to one side, venting atmosphere and fluid from multiple breach points. "Direct hit confirmed," Jackson reported. "Target vessel showing signs of system failure." But for every harvester ship they disabled, 2 more moved to fill the gap. The enemy's numerical advantage was becoming increasingly apparent as the battle raged on. "Admiral," Communications Officer Rivera called out, "we're receiving a transmission from Major Santos. Audio only." "Put it through," Chen ordered. Santos's voice came through, punctuated by the sounds of weapons fire and alarms. "Admiral, first. Objective secured. We've reached the central control node and planted the charges, encountering heavy resistance, biological defenses we didn't anticipate. The station itself is fighting back." "Understood, Major. What's your status on objectives 2 and 3? Team Bravo reports they're 80% to the power core. Team Charlie is... We've lost contact with Team Charlie." Chen exchanged a look with Jackson. Team Charlie had been tasked with disabling the station's FTL drive. Without that, even crippling the station's other systems might only be a temporary victory. "Major, can your team redirect to assist Charlie's objective after you complete yours?" A burst of weapons fire came through the comm before Santos responded. "Negative, Admiral. We're pinned down here. The harvesters have deployed some kind of biomechanical security drones. We'll hold as long as we can to ensure the charges detonate." Chen's expression remained impassive, but her hands tightened on the arms of her command chair. "Understood, Major. Complete your objective." As the communication ended, Nyala stepped closer to Chen. "What happens if Team Charlie fails to disable the FTL drive?" "Then we move to Contingency Omega," Chen replied grimly. "A concentrated attack on the station's dimensional anchor points with all remaining nuclear devices." "But that would likely destroy most of our fleet as well," Chen finished. "Yes, but it would also ensure the station doesn't escape to continue its harvest elsewhere." On the tactical display, the battle continued to unfold. Human and Alliance ships fought with desperate courage, inflicting significant damage on the harvester fleet, but taking heavy losses in return. Already 23 vessels had been destroyed or disabled, their crews either killed or evacuating in emergency pods. "Admiral," Jackson called, "sensors detect energy buildup in the station's core. They may be preparing to activate the FTL drive." Chen made her decision. "Signal all human vessels. Prepare to execute Contingency Omega on my command." "Wait!" the sensor officer called out. I'm detecting multiple explosions within the station, internal detonations consistent with our demolition packages. On the main screen, they could see flashes of light erupting from various points across the massive station's surface. Its previously organized movement patterns became erratic. Team Bravo reports success, Rivera announced. Power core critically damaged. They're attempting extraction now. Chen leaned forward. And Team Charlie? Still no contact, but... Rivera paused, listening to her earpiece. Admiral, we're receiving a new transmission. It's from Zix. Put it through, Chen ordered, surprised. The Arcturian liaison had joined one of the Alliance support vessels, not a boarding team. Zix's voice came through, strained but determined. Admiral Chen, this is Zix. After losing contact with Team Charlie, I took the initiative to gather a mixed team of Arcturian phase shifters and human explosive specialists. We've reached the FTL drive chamber and are placing charges. Now, Chen's eyes widened slightly. Zix, your people aren't combat trained. How did you... We observed, Zix replied simply. For months we've watched humans fight. You showed us not just tactics, but courage. We learned. In the background, they could hear human voices shouting technical instructions, coordinating, with Arcturian phase shifters who could briefly move through solid matter, an ability that proved invaluable for placing explosives in otherwise inaccessible locations. Charges set, Zix continued. Detonation in 30 seconds. We are attempting to reach extraction point, but... There was a pause. The way is blocked. We likely won't make it out, Admiral. Chen closed her eyes briefly. Your sacrifice will not be forgotten, Zix. It is freely given, the Arcturian replied. My ancestors were warriors before we chose peace. Perhaps some things are worth fighting. For after all, detonation in 10 seconds. For the Alliance, for Earth, for all life. The communication cut off. Seconds later, a massive explosion rocked the Harvester station, far larger than the previous detonations. The station's symmetrical structure began to warp visibly as secondary explosions cascaded through its systems. Station's FTL drive is offline, the sensor officer reported. Critical system failures detected across all major nodes. The effect on the Harvester fleet was immediate and unexpected. As the station began to break apart, many of the vessels simply went dark, as if a controlling intelligence had been severed. Others continued to fight, but with noticeably less coordination. They're networked, Jackson realized. The station was controlling them directly. Chen saw the opportunity immediately. All vessels concentrate fire on still-active Harvester ships. Rescue teams, prepare for immediate extraction of our boarding parties. The tide of battle shifted rapidly. With their command structure compromised, the remaining Harvester vessels fought individually without the coordinated tactics that had made them so formidable. Human and Alliance ships methodically targeted and destroyed them, while specialized rescue craft raced to extract the surviving boarding teams from the disintegrating station. 2 hours later, the battle was over. The Harvester station had torn itself apart in a series of catastrophic explosions, its fragments scattered across a wide area of space. Of the 300 Harvester vessels, nearly 200 had been destroyed. The remainder had either been disabled or had fled into deep space, cut off from their command structure and unlikely to pose an organized threat again. The victory had come at a terrible cost. 47 human and Alliance vessels destroyed, thousands of crew members lost. Of the boarding teams, only 38 personnel had been successfully extracted, less than a quarter of those deployed. On the bridge of the Defiant, Chen stood before the main viewport, watching as rescue vessels continued to search for survivors among the debris field. Niala joined her, silent for a long moment before speaking. When this began, I thought we were asking humans to fight our war. I was wrong. This was always humanity's fight too, a stand against extinction itself. Chen's gaze remained fixed on the viewport. Every sentient species faces the same fundamental question. What are we willing to die for? Today, humans and Alliance members answered together, not just for survival, but for the right of all life to exist free from predation. She turned to face Nyala. The Alliance rejected Earth because you feared our capacity for violence. Now, you've seen that same capacity directed toward protection. Will you still fear us? Fear? No, Nyala replied. Respect? Absolutely. Humanity has shown itself to be exactly what the galaxy needed. Guardians forged in the crucible of a death world. 3 weeks later, Earth's surviving fleet returned home to a hero's welcome. The ships bore the scars of battle. Hull breaches, sealed with emergency patches, weapon systems depleted, crews exhausted, but proud. In Geneva, at the headquarters of the United Earth Government, President Santiago welcomed a delegation from the Galactic Alliance. Nyala presented Santiago with a crystalline sphere, the symbol of full Alliance membership. In recognition of humanity's service to all sentient life, Nyala announced formally, Earth is welcomed as the newest member of the Galactic Alliance. Furthermore, in acknowledgement of humanity's unique capabilities, the Council has created a new position, Protectors of the Alliance. This role will be filled by human leaders who will oversee the creation of a combined defense force to ensure that no threat like the Harvesters can ever again endanger our shared worlds. Santiago accepted the sphere with appropriate solemnity, but it was Admiral Chen, standing nearby, who asked the question on many humans' minds. And will the Alliance be willing to learn what we have to teach? Not just about fighting, but about the will to face impossible odds? Zix stepped forward. The Arcturian had survived after all, though badly injured, rescued by one of his human teammates who had carried him to an escape pod. We have already begun learning, Admiral, Zix said. The Alliance was founded on principles of peace and cooperation, which remain valuable. But you have shown us that true peace doesn't come from avoiding conflict. It comes from being willing to stand against those who would destroy it. In the months that followed, the galaxy changed. Human military advisors traveled to Alliance worlds, helping to establish defense forces that balanced the Alliance's peaceful nature with the practical necessities of survival. Alliance scientists worked with human engineers to develop technologies that incorporated the best of both approaches. Harvester technology, carefully studied and reverse-engineered, revealed disturbing truths. The Harvesters were not a natural evolution, but had been created as collection mechanisms by a long-vanished civilization, one that had apparently consumed itself into extinction after creating these self-replicating Harvesters. More concerning were indications that the destroyed station was merely one of many such facilities scattered throughout the universe. The threat had been contained, not eliminated. 1 year after the Battle of the Harvester Station, Admiral Chen stood on the observation deck of Harmony Station, a new combined Human Alliance military installation constructed at the former battlefield. Beside her stood Nyala and representatives from 20 different Alliance species. They watched as a new class of vessel launched from the station's construction facilities. Neither purely human nor Alliance in design, it represented a true collaboration, incorporating human tactical systems and weapon designs with Alliance propulsion technology and life support systems. The ship's name was visible on its hull, UES Defiant 2. The first of the Guardian Fleet, Chen said with satisfaction, with a mixed Human Alliance crew. A new chapter for the galaxy, Nyala agreed. One where we face the darkness together. Chen nodded, her gaze fixed on the stars beyond the ship. Somewhere out there, other Harvester stations continued their grim work. But now, for the first time, they would face an enemy prepared to stop them, an alliance of species led by humans, who had learned from their death world never to accept extinction as inevitable. They came to us because they needed warriors, Chen said quietly. But perhaps what they really needed were survivors, people who knew that facing death is sometimes the only way to affirm life. The Defiant 2 engaged its engines, accelerating, away from the station toward deep space, toward its mission to protect all sentient life, no matter how different, no matter how distant. Behind it would come more ships, more combined crews, more shared purpose. Earth had answered the call, and the galaxy would never be the same again. The end.